My dad ruined my life. Then I found evidence that put him away. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. My dad always said he wanted what was best for me. He told everyone he was the kind of father who sacrificed everything for his kids. But the truth? He ruined my life. I was 19 when it all came crashing down. College acceptance letter in hand, scholarships lined up, a chance to finally escape him. And then, overnight, it was gone. The police showed up at my dorm with a warrant. Fraud. Theft. Charges I didn't even understand. They claimed I had forged documents, taken out loans in my name, and drained accounts I'd never even touched. And there, at the center of it all, was my father. I'll never forget his face in the courtroom, pretending to be the victim. He testified that I'd stolen from him, that I'd forged his signature, that I'd always been troubled. My friends abandoned me, my girlfriend left, professors whispered, and every job application I tried after that carried the stain of his lies. I was forced to drop out. No money, no home, and worst of all, no one believed me. Because who would suspect a father of destroying his own child? For years, I carried that weight. Depression, anger, nights spent staring at the ceiling wondering how I'd ever get free. But the thing about secrets is, they always leave cracks. 2 decades later, after my dad thought he'd won, I found something. A small, dust-covered box buried in the attic of his old office. Inside were folders, ledgers with numbers that didn't add up, letters addressed to banks in my name, a USB drive labeled with my initials. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. And when I plugged that USB into my laptop, I saw files, scans of my signature, accounts opened under my identity, and emails he'd sent to his partners bragging about how he cut me out before I could cut him. I had proof that could finally put him away. But the moment I saw it, I realized something chilling. If he went to these lengths before, what would he do now that I had evidence that could destroy him? I wasn't just holding files. I was holding a loaded gun pointed at the man who had already taken everything from me. And I knew he would never let me walk away alive with it. I couldn't sleep that night. The USB drive sat on my desk like a bomb, humming in my mind even after I pulled it out. Every page, every file, every forged document replayed in my head until the sun bled through the blinds. I opened the ledger first. My dad had always kept notebooks, claiming he was old school and didn't trust computers. But this one wasn't for grocery lists or budgets. It was a record of crimes. Page after page of transactions, dates, amounts, names. Some I didn't recognize, but others made my stomach turn. Old neighbors, my high school principal, even my mom's cousin. All tied to loans, cash advances, shady property deals. And sprinkled in the margins were notes, short, sharp reminders in his handwriting. Use him's signature next time. Transfer before end of quarter. Cover tracks, call Jim. And then one line, underlined twice. Never let him find out. The him was me. I felt my hands go cold. For years, I thought my life had spiraled because I'd failed, because maybe I wasn't good enough. But here it was in black and white, proof that my dad had orchestrated it. He hadn't just sabotaged me. He had planned it. I called my mom, desperate for answers, but she hung up after 2 words, "Don't dig." Her voice shook, like she knew exactly what I had stumbled into. That was when the paranoia set in. I started noticing a car idling across the street late at night. A man at the grocery store staring too long before ducking into another aisle. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. I told myself to breathe, to think like him. My dad was meticulous. If he had left these files, it meant 2 possibilities. Either he thought no one would ever find them, or he wanted me to. But then I found the second USB drive, tucked beneath the ledger in a manila envelope. This one was encrypted, password protected, and scribbled on the outside was just 3 chilling words. For insurance only. I didn't know what was on it, but I knew one thing. If I could crack it, I might finally have enough to end him for good. And maybe, just maybe, it would explain why my mom begged me not to look. I stared at that second USB drive for hours, my fingers tracing over the words he'd written, for insurance only. It was my dad's handwriting, sharp and deliberate, like every letter had been carved instead of penned. Insurance. The word twisted in my stomach. Insurance against who? Against me? Against his partners? Against someone even worse? I knew I couldn't just guess the password, but I also couldn't leave it alone. That night, I reached out to my friend Alex, the only person from my past who hadn't completely abandoned me after my dad's lies. Alex worked in IT security, and though we hadn't spoken in years, he owed me a favor. When I explained what I'd found, his voice dropped. If your dad's into what you're describing, this isn't just fraud. This is organized. Insurance files usually mean leverage, blackmail. We met the next day in a coffee shop 2 towns over. Alex connected the USB to his laptop, his eyes flicking nervously around like he expected someone to be watching. The encryption wasn't just basic, it was military grade. That meant money. Big money. This isn't something your average criminal sets up, Alex muttered. If I crack this, it's going to take time. And if anyone knows you've got it, you'll have a target on your back. I swallowed hard. I've already got one. We agreed to keep the drive hidden until he could work on it safely. I wrapped it in duct tape, sealed it inside a jar of rice, and buried it in my backyard like it was radioactive. Every movement felt paranoid, but deep down I knew it wasn't paranoia if my dad had already destroyed my life once. That night, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. A text. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. No name. No signature. Just that. I froze, my heart pounding so loud I thought the neighbors could hear. No one knew I'd found the drive. No one, except Alex. But when I called him, his phone went straight to voicemail. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house made me jump. Every passing car sent me peering through the blinds. The message was short, but it carried the weight of a gun pressed against my temple. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. I tried Alex again. Voicemail. I left 3 messages, my voice trembling, begging him to call me back. Nothing. By midnight, I drove past his apartment. His car was in the lot, but the windows were dark. I knocked until my knuckles hurt, but no answer. The next morning, I went back. His car was gone. He had eyes everywhere. I started combing through the ledger again, desperate for clues, when a name leapt out at me. James Whitaker. I knew that name. He was my dad's lawyer back when I was arrested at 19. The one who discovered the forged documents that buried me in court. My stomach twisted. Was he in on it? Had my dad paid him off? I dug deeper. The ledger listed regular payments to JW, thousands at a time. And beside one entry, keep him quiet. Him. Me. I slammed the book shut, my pulse hammering in my throat. My father hadn't just ruined my life by accident. He had orchestrated every piece of it with accomplices who still had power. And then, as if the universe wanted to prove me right, another text came through. Same number. Next time, we won't warn you. Attached was a photo. My house. Taken from across the street. The photo of my house burned into my mind. My porch light glowing, the blinds drawn. Proof that someone had been close enough to take it without me even knowing. My skin crawled with the thought that, as I sat inside flipping through that ledger, they were out there watching me. I didn't even turn the lights off that night. I just sat on the couch, holding a kitchen knife, waiting for the sound of footsteps. Every car that passed felt like a threat. Every dog barking in the distance made my chest tighten. By morning, exhaustion pulled at me, but adrenaline kept me sharp. I decided to test something. I opened the curtains wide, sat at my desk in full view of the street, and pretended to type. If someone was still watching, I wanted them to know I knew. Sure enough, within minutes, a black sedan I didn't recognize rolled by, slow, deliberate. The driver didn't look at me, but I felt it anyway. Surveillance. I needed help. But who? The police? Last time, they believed my dad over me without question. Still, I gathered the files, printed copies, and walked into the precinct. My hands were shaking so badly that the papers fluttered onto the officer's desk like snow. He looked at them, looked at me, then leaned back in his chair. You're telling me your dad orchestrated fraud that spanned decades? That he faked your involvement? You understand how this sounds? I have proof. I snapped, slamming the ledger down. Check the dates, the signatures, the payments. It's all here. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Well, take a look. But his eyes told me the truth. They thought I was crazy. That night, when I got home, the ledger was gone. My desk drawer, where I'd locked it, empty. The only thing left in its place was a single sheet of paper. In my father's handwriting. This ends now. I stood frozen, staring at the note in my father's handwriting. The words, "This ends now," felt like a death sentence. He had been inside my house. Inside the one place I thought I was safe. I checked every lock, every window. Nothing was broken, no forced entry, which meant he still had a key. Of course he did. He had built his entire life on control, and I had been stupid to think I could lock him out of mine. I tore through the house, searching for the ledger. Gone. Every single page of proof that tied him to decades of fraud, wiped away as if I had imagined it. My chest tightened, panic clawing at my throat. But then I remembered the USB drives. I ran to the backyard, hands shaking as I dug through the damp soil where I'd buried the jar. The duct tape was still there, the rice still sealed around the device. My relief was short-lived. The jar was empty, and in the dirt, pressed into the earth where the jar had been, was a cigarette butt. My dad didn't smoke. Someone else had been here. I dropped to my knees, staring at the evidence of intrusion. If it wasn't him, it meant he had help. Accomplices. Watchers. People who weren't just cleaning up after him. They were protecting him. That night, I barely breathed as I sat in the dark, clutching a baseball bat. I couldn't call the police again. They already thought I was paranoid. And if my dad had people on the inside, I'd just be painting a bigger target on my back. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Another message from the same number. Nice try. We have everything. I should have felt hopeless. Instead, something inside me snapped. If they wanted to scare me into silence, it wasn't working anymore. Because they had made one mistake. In their rush to take everything, they had overlooked a second hiding spot, one only I knew about. And inside it was the one thing that could burn my father's empire to the ground. They thought they had everything. They thought wrong. When I was younger, before my dad had stripped me of any sense of control, I built a habit of hiding things where no one would ever think to look. Old report cards, letters from a girl I loved, even spare cash. Back then, it was just a child's desperate attempt to keep something of my own. But now, it was survival. In the crawl space above my bedroom closet, tucked behind a loose wooden beam, I kept a metal tin. Inside it were backup drives, ones I hadn't touched in years. On one of them, dusty and forgotten, was a folder I had copied back when I first found the ledgers. I hadn't even remembered doing it in my panic, but thank God I had. The files weren't complete, but what was there was enough to raise questions. Scans of the forged contracts, transaction lists, even an email chain between my dad and his lawyer, Whitaker. In one of those emails, Whitaker wrote, "If he finds out, we'll bury him again, just like last time." I felt my throat tighten as I read those words. Bury him again. They had destroyed my life once, and they were openly planning to do it again if I didn't stay quiet. I copied everything onto a fresh USB, slipped it into my pocket, and drove out of town. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly they ached, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror every few minutes. Was I being followed? I couldn't tell anymore. I knew I couldn't go to the police directly. They had already written me off as paranoid. So I made another plan. I would find a journalist. Someone who couldn't be bought. Someone willing to burn his empire down in the court of public opinion if the justice system wouldn't. But before I could make the first call, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the passenger seat of my car, tucked under the USB I thought I'd hidden well, was another note. "You can run, but you can't hide." I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened, my eyes glued to the note on the seat. "You can run, but you can't hide." They had been inside my car. The USB was still there, untouched, but the message was clear. They wanted me to know I was being watched, that no matter where I went, my father's reach stretched further than I imagined. I drove until the gas light blinked, ending up in a diner off the interstate. The kind of place where truckers nursed black coffee and nobody asked questions. I slid into a booth, pulled out my phone, and searched, "Investigative journalist corruption fraud." That's when I found her, Claire Donovan. She had broken stories on corporate embezzlement and exposed a senator's hush money scandal. She wasn't just credible, she was fearless. If anyone could take my dad down, it was her. I drafted the email 3 times before I hit send. I attached only a few files, just enough to prove I wasn't some crank. The subject line read, "Urgent, evidence of decades-long fraud and cover-ups." To my shock, she replied within an hour, "Meet me tomorrow. Public place. Don't bring originals, just copies." For the first time in years, I felt something like hope. Maybe this was my chance to finally expose him. But then, as I was paying for my coffee, the waitress leaned in close. "Honey," she whispered, "2 men have been sitting in that corner since you walked in. Haven't touched their food, just watching you." I turned. 2 men in suits, clean-shaven, silent. Their eyes flicked away the moment I met them. I left cash on the table and walked toward the door, forcing myself not to run. But as I reached my car, I saw it. A fresh note taped to the windshield. Don't meet her. I sat in my car with the note crumpled in my fist, my pulse thundering in my ears. Don't meet her. My father's reach was everywhere. The diner, my car, my house. He had people shadowing me like I was some fugitive instead of his own child. For a moment, I thought about backing out. Maybe it wasn't worth it. Maybe exposing him would only get me killed. But then I remembered 19-year-old me, handcuffed in front of my classmates, branded a criminal, watching my dreams of college and freedom collapse because of his lies. That memory burned hotter than fear. So I drove. Claire had chosen a library downtown, wide open, filled with cameras and people. I parked 2 blocks away, ditched my phone in the glove box, and slipped inside through the side entrance. My heart pounded as I scanned the rows of books until I spotted her. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, leather jacket, a laptop open in front of her. She looked like she'd been waiting her whole life for stories like mine. Sit, she said, her voice low. No introductions, no small talk. Show me what you've got. I slid a USB across the table. Copies only, like she'd asked. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, opening files, scrolling fast. The deeper she went, the tighter her jaw became. Finally, she looked up. This isn't just fraud, she whispered. This is systemic. Shell companies, laundered money, bribed officials. Your father isn't just a con man. He's running a criminal network. The words hit me like a punch. I'd known he was corrupt, but this was bigger. Before I could respond, Claire's eyes flicked over my shoulder. Her expression hardened. Don't look now, she said, but you've been followed. I turned slightly, just enough to catch my reflection in the library's glass wall. 2 men in suits, the same ones from the diner, and one of them was walking straight toward us. The man in the suit closed the distance between us with steady, deliberate steps. His expression was blank. No anger, no fear, just a cold efficiency that made my stomach clench. The second man lingered by the entrance, blocking the exit like a guard dog. Claire didn't flinch. She calmly slid the USB into her jacket pocket and snapped her laptop shut. Stay calm, she whispered. We're in public. He won't risk making a scene. But I wasn't so sure. My father's people had already broken into my house, stolen evidence, and left threatening notes. What was stopping them from removing me, even in broad daylight? The man leaned down, close enough that I could smell his aftershave. You need to leave, he said quietly, his tone flat and final. Walk out. Now. Claire's hand brushed mine under the table, a silent signal to stay put. Then she spoke, loud enough for half the library to hear. Sir, if you're harassing my client, I'll call security. The man's jaw tightened. For the first time, his mask cracked, just slightly. He glanced at Claire, then back at me, and in that flicker of hesitation, I realized something important. They didn't want attention. Not here. Not yet. I forced myself to lean back in my chair, feigning calm I didn't feel. Funny, I said, my voice shaking but louder than his. My father always sends someone else to do his dirty work. Too cowardly to face me himself? A few heads turned. Whispers spread. The man straightened, his fists clenched, but he didn't move closer. Instead, he gave a small nod to his partner by the door. Together, they walked out without another word. Claire exhaled sharply. They won't stop, she muttered. And if they know you're with me, that means they're watching me too. Her phone buzzed just then. She glanced at the screen and went pale. She turned it toward me. A text. From an unknown number. Next time, we won't miss. Claire didn't waste a second. She shoved her laptop into her bag, grabbed my arm, and hissed, We have to move. Now. We slipped out of the library through a side door, weaving between parked cars until we reached her beat-up hatchback. The windows were tinted, plates half peeling, a journalist's survival car. She drove with one hand on the wheel, the other typing something furiously into her phone. Where are we going? I asked, my voice breaking. Somewhere they won't expect, she muttered. A safe house. Old contact of mine owes me favors. We drove for over an hour, past the city limits, through winding back roads lined with trees. Finally, she pulled into the driveway of a rundown cabin that looked abandoned from the outside. The boards were warped, the paint chipped, but the locks on the door were heavy-duty. Inside, The windows were covered with blackout curtains, and there were 2 deadbolts on every door. "This is where whistleblowers used to stay," Claire explained. "No internet, no phone lines, nothing traceable." The silence of the place pressed on me. My nerves hummed with adrenaline, but for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe without someone watching. That night, we spread the files across the table. Claire examined every document, every forged contract, every email. "If we publish this," she said, "your father's empire burns. But it won't be easy. We'll need corroboration, witnesses, records outside your possession." I nodded, but my stomach churned. Witnesses meant dragging more people into danger, people who might already be compromised. Around 3 a.m., I woke to a sound outside, gravel crunching under tires. My heart hammered as I crept to the window and peeled back the curtain just enough to see headlights. A black SUV parked at the end of the driveway. They had found us. The glow of the SUV's headlights sliced through the cracks in the curtains, illuminating the cabin walls in eerie flashes. My breath caught in my throat. Claire was already on her feet, sliding a pistol from her bag like she'd been expecting this. "Stay away from the windows," she whispered. I dropped to the floor as she killed the lights. Darkness swallowed the cabin, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the crunch of boots on gravel outside. Whoever they weren't in a hurry. They were letting us know we were trapped. Through the slits of the curtain, I caught glimpses of silhouettes. 3 men, maybe 4, fanning out toward the cabin. They moved with precision, not like common thugs, but trained. My father hadn't just sent watchers this time. He had sent hunters. "Back door," Claire hissed. She gestured for me to follow, but when she cracked it open, the beam of a flashlight swept across the threshold. They had us surrounded. My pulse hammered so loud I thought it would give us away. "What do we do?" I whispered, my voice cracking. Claire's jaw tightened. "We hold out." She pulled a metal box from under the table, emergency supplies. Inside, water, canned food, a burner phone, and a small generator. But it was the second pistol she handed me that made my hands shake. I hadn't held a gun since my dad forced me to shoot cans in the woods when I was 12, barking that a man needs to be ready. The memory made bile rise in my throat. The first thud rattled the front door. Not a knock, a test. A second thud followed, harder. They were coming in. I backed into the hallway, clutching the gun, my palms slick with sweat. Claire crouched by the doorframe, weapon steady, her breathing calm while mine came in gasps. Then a voice called out from outside. "Give us the files, and we'll let you walk away." The words chilled me because they weren't shouted in anger. They were spoken calmly, like a promise. But I knew better. If we opened that door, we'd never walk away again. The pounding at the door grew harder, more insistent. Each strike rattled the frame until dust shook loose from the ceiling beams. Claire crouched low, her pistol aimed steady, while my hands trembled around the one she'd given me. "Last chance," the voice outside called. Calm, confident. "Hand over the files. No one has to get hurt." But that was a lie. I could hear it in the way they moved. Boots crunching closer, the scrape of metal against wood as someone tried the back door. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to erase us. Claire met my eyes, her expression sharp as steel. "When they come in, don't hesitate," she whispered. "Hesitation gets you killed." I swallowed hard, while burning the back of my throat. My father had trained me to shoot cans when I was 12. Back then, I thought it was some twisted bonding exercise. Now, I realized he'd been teaching me fear disguised as power. And here I was, decades later, pointing a gun at the ghosts he'd sent after me. The first crack of splintering would snap me back. The doorframe groaned. Then it burst open with a thunderous crash. 2 men surged inside, black masks, gloved hands, one wielding a crowbar. Claire fired first. The shot exploded in the tiny cabin, deafening, the man with the crowbar dropping to the floor with a cry of pain. The second man lunged at me. Instinct took over. I raised the gun, squeezed, and the recoil slammed into my arms. He stumbled, not down but back, clutching his shoulder as he cursed. Adrenaline surged hot through my veins. I wanted to drop the gun, run, vomit, but I couldn't. Not now. From outside, another voice shouted, "Pull back." Tires screeched. Doors slammed. In moments, the SUV roared away, taillights disappearing into the night. Claire lowered her weapon, her chest rising and falling fast. "They'll be back," she said grimly. And next time, they won't run. Then her phone buzzed, a single new message lighting up the cracked screen. She showed it to me, her face pale. You just made our list. The cabin smelled of gunpowder and fear. My ears still rang from the shots, and every shadow felt like it hid another intruder. But the message on Claire's phone, "You just made our list," was what truly broke me. They weren't just after me anymore. They were after her, too. Claire paced, muttering under her breath, her journalist instincts already piecing things together. They found us too fast, she said finally, stopping to look at me. We didn't make a call. We didn't send an email. We were careful. Her eyes narrowed. That means someone told them where we'd be. My stomach dropped. You think we've been betrayed? I don't think, she said. I know. I racked my brain. Who could it be? Alex had vanished after trying to help. My mom had begged me not to dig, but would she go as far as to protect him? Or was it someone even closer, someone who knew about the safe house, about Claire, about everything? Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. This time, not a threat. A photo. Alex, tied to a chair, his face bruised, eyes swollen. The caption read, "This is what happens to rats." I staggered back, my throat closing. Alex hadn't betrayed me. He'd been caught, which meant the leak had to come from somewhere else. Somewhere inside my family. Claire saw the photo, her lips tightening. They're tightening the circle, she said. They want you isolated, paranoid. They want you to doubt everyone. But deep down, I didn't need to doubt, I knew. Because as my hands shook, scrolling through the rest of the photos, one detail stabbed me straight through the chest. Standing in the corner of the room behind Alex, blurred but unmistakable, was my younger brother. The same brother who'd sworn he hated our father. The same brother who had begged me to trust him. The same brother I had once promised I would always protect. My brother. The grainy photo burned into my mind. Him standing behind Alex. Not tied up, not hurt, but present. Complicit. I wanted to deny it, to tell myself it was doctored, a trick. But the truth hit me like a gut punch. My father had poisoned him, too. Maybe with promises, maybe with fear, maybe with money. Either way, blood hadn't made him an ally. It had made him a weapon. Claire grabbed my shoulder. Focus. This is leverage. If your brother's in the room, he's a witness. He can tie your father to all of it. I shook my head, anger boiling up. He's not a witness. He's part of it. The final plan crystallized in my mind. There was no more running, no more hiding. If they wanted me silenced, they'd have to do it in the open. I still had the backup files. Claire had connections, and Alex, if he was alive, could still be saved. So we set the trap. Claire leaked just enough to her contacts. A teaser story about a prominent businessman tied to fraud and organized crime. Not names, not details, but enough to make reporters circle like sharks. Enough to make my father nervous. 2 nights later, I confronted him. It was in his office, the same place he'd once testified against me. The same walls lined with diplomas and framed photos of a family he'd destroyed. He looked older, but his eyes still carried that same smug cruelty. You should have stayed quiet, he said, his voice calm, almost disappointed. You were always too much like me, too stubborn to survive. I pulled out my phone, hit play. His voice filled the room. Recordings Alex had secretly made before they'd caught him. My father bragging about the fraud, about buying off lawyers, about ruining my life. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. Checkmate, I said. The doors burst open. Journalists, cameras, and police. Claire had timed it perfectly. The evidence we'd gathered, the recordings, the files, it was all out in the open. My father's empire crumbled in seconds. His lawyer was dragged out, my brother's face plastered on headlines as his accomplice, and Alex, rescued, alive, though broken, was carried to safety. And me? For the first time in my life, I wasn't the ruined child of a monster. I was the one who ended him. As they took my father away in cuffs, he glared at me, spitting venom with his eyes. But I didn't flinch. I didn't cower. Because finally, I had won.